A very warm good evening to everyone present here. I, C.A. Dapaka Gutlutia, welcome you all to today's session on auditing standards. Today we have with us C.A. Ravi Bansal. Welcome, sir. Before starting the session, I would request everyone to please join for ICAI motto.
य एष सुप्तेषु जाग्रति य एष सुप्तेषु जाग्रति कामं 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 कामपुरुषो पुरुषो निर्विमाणः निर्विमाणः तदेव शुक्रं तदेव शुक्रदब्रह्मा तद्ब्रह्मा तदेवामृतमुच्यते तस्मिन् लोकः शतः सर्वे तदूनात्यपि कश्चन एतद्द्वैता 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 एतद्द्वैता.
Before we start the session, as we all know, auditing standard, one of the very burning topic as on today with everyday changes and so many things happening in around us. So before we start the session, I would like to give a brief introduction about today's speaker. Mr. Ravi Bansal, fellow chartered accountant, is vastly experienced in audit and advisory profession. Ravi is a senior partner with SRBC and Company LLP, chartered accountancy firm, and is with the firm for more than 22 years. He has a total experience of more than 30 years in providing audit and assurance services. He has extensive exposure auditing various local and MNC companies in life science, consumer products, and QSR industry. He has experience in handling a wide range of assignments, including statutory audits, transaction advisory services, US GAAP reporting, IFRS engagements, and accounting and financial reporting projects, and business valuation. He has significant experience in capital market transactions, including IPO. He is a member of Qualified Audit Review Committee of the Securities and Exchange Board of India. He has been past member of Accounting and Auditing Standard Committee of BCA, member of FICCI Life Science Sector, and he is a regular speaker at various external forums. I request everyone to please welcome our today's speaker. Thank you. Sir, the dais is all yours. Welcome, sir.
Good evening, and Deepika ma'am, thanks for that very generous introduction. And it's always a pleasure, talking to my fellow colleagues and chartered accountants and professionals. And today's session, I would just keep it, one sec, I'll just show my screen. Okay, fine. So today's session, what I'm going to cover over next 1 hour or so is, I'm going to deal with basically standard on auditing, and we'll cover one of the most important. It's a very, very basic and fundamental topic. I mean, if one goes to see in terms of going concern assessment and its evaluation, and ultimately the impact in terms of or audit work and ultimate audit reporting. But I think this being so basic, but still, this is the most tricky, most complex, and sometimes most risky auditing standards. And in the current context, all of us understand the importance of compliance with auditing standards. I mean, it's not that in the past it was not important, but in the current context, I think it is very, very critical and important, in the sense how regulators and external the world is going to view, assess your audit work, and ultimately judge the work. So that's the background to it. And let's move on. So today, essentially over next 1 hour or so, I mean, this is the contents or key themes within the standard SA 570 that I'm going to cover with you guys. At any point of time, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to make it interactive. And if you don't get time, in the interest of time, I'm available otherwise also. The organizers have my contact details. I'm just a text or an email away. Anyone can drop me a text or an email, and happy to help anyone. So moving on, let's first deal with what is the scope of SA 570. So essentially, if you see, the standard deals with the responsibilities of the auditors. Can you see my screen, please?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Yeah. Can you minimize the my own camera from here so that I can also see the screen?
Yes sir, yes sir. Sir, आपका कैमरा ऑडियो वीडियो सब दिखाई दे रहा है, सुनाई दे रहा है सर. कंटिन्यू चलो.
Yeah. Okay. So if you see, the going concern standard deals with the responsibilities of the auditors for the going concern assumption, which is used in the financial statements, and the implication of the same in the auditor's report, ultimately, that one has to take care of. So now let's briefly understand what is the going concern assumption and what does it imply in the financial statements. So if you see, what is the going concern assumption? Going concern is the fundamental accounting assumption that has to be applied while preparing of the financial statements. And what does it mean? That the entity and its business will continue in the foreseeable future, and everywhere, for the sake of simplicity, though this period can be more, but the minimum period one is required to assess and report and conclude is 12 months from your date of the last financials. So say, for example, if you are auditing 31st March 2021, so then your going concern assessment, you have to make 12 months from that date. So that's what it implies. And when we say that it is going to continue in foreseeable future, it means that it will realize all its assets, it will be able to meet its obligation, pay off its creditors, other liabilities, etc. Let's now understand, why this going concern assumption, I mean, where it is required. Sometimes you could have a general purpose financial statement. There, the standards, etc., require that going concern assumption is to be considered. And sometimes you could have a special purpose financial statements where there may not be a specific requirement that one has to apply going concern assessment, but then still, depending on what is the framework under which the accounts or the financials are prepared, I think it is very, very important that if you're going to say that fundamental assumptions are to be applied, then going concern is one of the most important one. And it is not just, that going concern assumption is important for a private sector company, but this is also important for public sector entities. And this could also be relevant for entities which are, heavily dependent on government funding, etc. Because suddenly what could happen is, they may not get the funding and their going concern could be at a risk. So I think this applies to all situations, and one has to always be on a lookout for this. Now let's move on and understand like what is the responsibility and who is responsible for assessing the entity's ability to continue as a going concern. So if one looks at I mean, depending on what is the framework under which the financials are prepared, I mean, but broadly speaking, I mean, if it is even in other financial reporting framework, like there may not be an explicit requirement for management to make a specific assessment of the entity's ability to continue as a going concern. However, as per the fundamental principles, management is always required to make this assessment, and it is auditor's responsibility to evaluate this going concern assessment carried out by the management. So please remember this fundamental rule, that it is management's primary responsibility in terms of making the going concern assessment, and as an auditor, our role and our duty is to evaluate this assessment of going concern carried out by the management, whether it is appropriate, whether it factors all the variables, and whether the assumptions look reasonable, and so forth, so on, which we will deal with as we move ahead. So moving on, as we discussed, it is the primary management's responsibility to carry out the GC assessment. This process is complex, highly judgmental, and the reason for the same is that it is a significant judgment about the future outcome, and future is always inherently risky because it may occur, it may not occur, it may not always be 100% right. So in that context, auditors have to always keep this aspect in mind, that does it look reasonable, does it look okay, are there other facts, etc., which are available, which cast a doubt on this. Because I mean, future inherently is always high risk and high degree of uncertainty. One has to make this assessment and always take a judgment view whether this looks reasonable or no. So always keep this aspect in mind, that going concern assessment may look very easy and straightforward, but there is a very high degree of risk involved, because you are always going to make an evaluation of the management's judgment about the future projections of the business and future events which are likely to occur, and which, as I said, are inherently risky because of the future events. Moving on now, let's understand the auditor's responsibility regarding the going concern evaluation and appropriateness of the management's use of the going concern. So if you look at from objectives and responsibilities of the auditor, and auditor's responsibility is that once the management has made an assessment of the going concern, first and foremost, what one needs to do is, I mean, if the management has not made, it is a primary responsibility of the auditor to demand the management to make the assessment and give the assessment with all the underlying supports, assumptions, and proper validations to the auditors for their evaluation. And if the management is unable to do, then we have to straight away bring it out in our auditor's report. It could even end up being a disclaimer or an adverse opinion. But let's for a moment keep that aside. I mean, our fundamental objective and responsibility is that as an auditor, we need to obtain sufficient audit evidence and conclude whether it is appropriate that the going concern basis or assumption has been used by the management. Basis this audit evidence, then the auditor is required to conclude whether there is any material uncertainty which exists, which may lead to a significant doubt about the entity's ability to continue as a going concern. Depending on the work done, conclusions reached, and the outcome, and the facts and prevailing circumstances, then one needs to deal with in the auditor's report appropriately. Moving on, now let's see how does one go about, doing this risk assessment procedures and the related activities in terms of the going concern assessment. So, I mean, first and foremost, any auditor should consider that whether there are any existing events or condition that would cast any significant doubt on the entity's ability to continue as a going concern, and then determine the appropriate procedure. So you could have two situations. One, if such an assessment has been performed, and then the auditor should discuss this with the management and determine whether all the events which are required, whether all the variables which are required have been considered by the management individually, collectively. Then are there any risk or factors emerging from that? Then what is the management's plan to address them and respond to them? And as I said earlier, if this assessment has not been performed, then the auditor should discuss with the management and insist on getting it done. And it is not just the larger entities that this is important, but this is also important for all kinds of business, be it small, large, mid-size. And sometimes the size of the entity may affect its ability to handle adverse condition. Smaller entities may be able to respond quickly to the opportunities, but they may even lack resources to sustain operations. I mean, like one small example could be, which could be of particular relevance to a smaller entities, is the risk that banks and other lenders may suddenly cease to support the entity, as well as the possible loss of its business, principal suppliers, customers, key employees, etc. Or even it could happen under a franchise agreement or a license or a legal agreement that you could run into issues. And because of the size of the business, if it's a smaller mid-size, the potential impact could be even much more bigger. So that's the context we must keep in mind, that it is not just the bigger businesses which have this risk, but all kinds of businesses which one is auditing. One needs to assess this and keep this in mind. Moving on, now let's see a few of the examples that may cast significant doubt on the entity's ability to continue as a going concern. I mean, I broadly, broken this into three categories. One is the financial, other is operating, and third is the other category. Financial is, the most, simple and the straightforward thing which most of us chartered accountants deal with this day in and day out. It could be in terms of, that your borrowings are near repayment and you don't have funds available. How would you make the payment? You have all adverse deteriorating condition, unable to pay the creditors, dividend has been stopped, no fresh line of credit available, those kind of things. And in terms of operations, it could be, that some major market, major product has been stopped, or shortage of materials, etc., that could suddenly lead to this kind of situation. And other factors could be various, depending on case to case. But the significance of such events or conditions often can be mitigated by other factors. For example, the effect of an entity being unable to make its normal debt repayment may be counterbalanced by management's plan to maintain adequate cash flows by alternative means. So one has to always keep in mind that, look, what are the potential risk, what are the factors management has identified, what are the mitigating plans, what are the alternates available, and then see this in a holistic manner. I mean, it just does not mean, say for example, if you have a negative ratios, that there is a going concern issue. I mean, there could be other factors which we need to keep in mind. Similarly, say a loss of a principal supplier may be mitigated by availability of a suitable alternate source of supply. So that's what I'm saying. You must always look out for mitigating factors, that is there any other mitigation plan available. Let's move on and let's assess how do we evaluate management's assessment. First and foremost, as I said at the beginning, a going concern assessment has to be made for a minimum period of 12 months. And if the management has made for a longer duration, then auditors have to also evaluate the same on a longer period. But as I said, minimum is 12 months. Then, what one needs to see is that are there any events, conditions, variable, inputs, etc., which are available, which are in the public domain, but the management has not considered the same in their assessment? Then I think one has to bring that out. Then look for all the assumptions and the key inputs and variables which management has considered in their going concern. Like, for example, the simplest illustration one can give is, say there are future cash flow projections. Do they look realistic? Does it have a trend which will justify basis past history? Does it look practical, achievable? Is it too aggressive? And anyone can say, look, this does not look reasonable and unachievable. So keep that aspect in mind. Plus, in few cases, one also has a situation where management's assumption would include continued support by third parties, and this could be through subordination of loan, commitment to maintain or provide additional funding or guarantees, or such support is important to an entity's ability to continue as a going concern. In this situation, the auditor needs to consider that such confirmations are in writing, and then the terms and conditions of those third parties. And we must also assess that what is the ability of this third party to provide us support. Say, for example, someone says, look, I'm dependent on my going concern and XYZ has given me a support letter. I think we have to use our professional skepticism and judgment and make that assessment whether this XYZ is in a position to support you, because that entity or that individual's financial condition itself may be so bad. Forget about supporting this entity, they may not even be able to withstand on their own. So that kind of judgment we have to make, whether someone who is committing or providing a support assurance, whether they have the ability to do so. Moving on, we should always keep in mind that while doing this, that what is the process followed by the management in terms of making the assessment, whether the right level of senior people are involved in making it, or it is just an Excel based exercise and there is no business input to it. Because the Excel based going concern assessment, you'll never ever have an issue. I think there is a wide variety of business inputs that goes in, and one has to keep that aspect in mind, that what is the type of management involvement in this making of the going concern assessment, what are the variables used, what is the process followed, and also get the management to document all the key assumptions which they've used, and then what are the management's future plan of actions for various key assumptions, and are they feasible, practical, or no? In this aspect, I would just like to also share one practical point here, that a lot of cases for subsidiaries of overseas entities and MNCs, you find that not only MNCs, it could be even for domestic companies, that for going concern assumption validation, one gets a continuation or a support letter or a financial support letter from the shareholder managers, that they will be willing to fund, and they commit that they will keep the entity liquid and provide all the necessary financial support. So this is also one of the common ways of ensuring that underlying entity, which may not have its own ability to raise funds, etc., but then they survive basis the support letter on financial operating support from the parent or the shareholders. So such arrangements, from an auditor standpoint, we must always ensure they are in writing, they are given by the authorized personnel, then they are well documented in terms of the board minutes, audit committee, and in terms of our audit documentation also, we must appropriately document it. Moving on, now let's see what are the additional procedures which are required to be carried out by auditors when we have situation that there are events or conditions identified leading to material uncertainty. Okay, so if you have such a situation, I mean, what procedures does one need to do? So these procedures are not complete in their own sense. These are more for illustration. One has to devise these procedures keeping in mind the type of industry, the type of client, peculiar situation one is handling, but these are more for discussion purposes. So don't treat this as an all-inclusive list. So what does one do? I mean, as I said, first look at the data which the management is using to make that assessment. Is it reliable? And as I keep on repeating, what are the assumptions, key variables used, whether they look okay, whether the entity has prepared cash flow projections, and are the cash flow projections for future looking okay if one sees in the light and context of the past performance? Say, for example, in the past historical period, I mean, your performance is at a particular level and the future projections that you've prepared is completely, at 180 degrees from that. So what is it that fundamentally has changed, or it is just that it is a wishful projection one has prepared? So see that context in mind, and that is how one has to make that assessment. And most importantly, having done all of this, that in terms of going in detail, the management's evaluation, satisfying ourselves in terms of the key assumptions used, variables used, discussing with the people, and also satisfying ourselves in terms of senior level involvement in preparing and making that evaluation. The last line of defense is we also need to discuss this with those charged with governance and ensure that this is adequately documented at the board and audit committee. And in terms of concluding our audit, we should also ensure that we take it in our letter of representation. But as I said, without doing any of the procedure, if we just end up taking a letter of representation saying going concern assumption is appropriate, that may not be most appropriate, or it will fail the auditing standards. Let's see a few of these other procedures that one can carry out. It would include, analyzing, discussing the cash flows and with the management. Then look at entities' latest interim financial statements, and even subsequent data sometimes can be helpful in that regard. Then look at the company's loan agreements, business agreements, if there are any critical joint venture, franchise agreement, that what are the terms, conditions. Look at the audit committee, board meetings, and COD meetings, discussions, and minutes. And in terms of discussion on this topic with those charged with governance, that should be adequately documented and supported. Then also have a meeting with the legal counsel and a treasury head, and if absolutely essential, if there are any say bankers, etc., where there is a discussion going on for funding, that we must see if there are term sheets signed, are they looking as binding, non-binding in terms of certainty, etc. Then also look at entity's ability to fulfill, its orders and other commitments. So this could be, endless, but one has to design these procedures keeping in mind what is your entity's business, what is the industry in which operates, and what are the peculiar things. One is to also keep in mind, say if it is a regulated or a PI entity, that if there are any regulatory reports available, one has to also see that from a compliance standpoint, that does it give you any red signals or smoke. Moving on, now let's discuss how does an auditor conclude on this going concern evaluation, especially if there exists an material uncertainty. So magnitude of a potential impact is significant, and plus the likelihood of occurrence is high. Then there should be an appropriate disclosure of this fact. So as I said, one has to see this in context of two aspects. One is the magnitude of the potential impact plus the likelihood of the occurrence. And in that context, one has to decide in terms of how do you handle it, how do you respond to it, what is the disclosure requirement, how does one deal in terms of the auditor's report, and so on. So moving forward, we will discuss the disclosure adequacy now. So you could have two situations, that when there are events or conditions identified, and one has also concluded that material uncertainty exists. Second situation is when events or conditions are identified, but they are of such a nature and magnitude and likelihood that it does not lead to a material uncertainty. Okay, so you could have both situations. So in the first situation, one needs to ensure that this is adequately disclosed, and the disclosure has to be in detail, and it should bring out all the facts, etc. And then we have to also deal with the same in our audit opinion. And if you have a second situation, then the disclosure could be enough, but you have to bring out all the disclosure requirements, what is there, that what are the principal events or conditions which is leading to this, what is the management's evaluation, what are the mitigating plans, what are the management plan to handle this situation, how are they going to overcome this, and what are the significant estimates or judgments that one has made in terms of this to conclude that this is not a material uncertainty. So, if you look at when financial statements are prepared in accordance with fair presentation framework, the auditor's evaluation as to whether financial statements achieve their fair presentation include the consideration of overall presentation, structure, and content of the financial statement, and whether financial statement including the related notes represent the underlying transaction and event in the manner that achieves fair presentation. So depending on the facts and circumstances, the auditor may determine that additional disclosure are necessary or required to achieve a fair presentation. So, that is where it could lead to a situation that auditor will have a discussion with the management that when events or conditions have been identified, that significant doubt on the entity's ability to continue as going concern are there, but based on audit evidence obtained, the auditor concludes that no material uncertainty exists and no disclosure are explicitly required by the applicable auditing standard regarding the circumstances. So it could be, you know, case specific, and it could vary from situation to situation. Look, there are conditions identified, but is it leading to material uncertainty? That's the one way. And other way is, look, there are conditions, but it does not lead to material uncertainty. So one is to keep this fine line of distinction. Now let's see how does an auditor deal with the implications of this in our auditor's report. See, having made this going concern assessment, I mean, if you just summarize this, like you see what is the facts prevailing, what's happening in the economy, what are the external circumstances in terms of the company's business, things happening in the economy. It could be a good example could be the recent pandemic. I mean, a lot of companies were forced to reassess their going concern in much more detail, unlike in the past. So these are all the factors one has to keep in mind. So if you look at in terms of auditor's report, I mean, this slide may look very busy, but let's simplify this. You could end up in a situation that yes, there is a going concern assessment, material uncertainty, and management is refusing to make an assessment. Then, I mean, in spite of auditors requesting for asking for a detailed assessment, if the management for some reason is unable to carry out the assessment, then you would end up in giving either an adverse opinion or a disclaimer. You could end up in a situation that yes, there are going concern issues, but it does not have a material uncertainty. Then the disclosures are enough. Then one has to take a judgment call, but the most common prevailing practice is today that there is appropriate disclosure made in the financial statements, as we discussed earlier. And I mean, the prevailing practice today is a lot of auditors want to play safe, and they end up giving an emphasis of matter on the same without qualifying the matter. So that's also an acceptable view. And you could also end up in a situation, what we just discussed earlier, that yes, material uncertainty exists, and there are mitigation plans which are given by the management, but as an auditor, you are not convinced, and in spite of having a dialogue with the client, you're not satisfied with the mitigation factors and the plans given by the management. So even in that situation, you will end up qualifying or modifying your auditor's report. So I mean, till few years back, it was very uncommon to see, you know, the importance to the going concern assumption and the mention of the same in the auditor's report. But if you look at last few years, due to various, you know, events and happenings, a lot of businesses have gone down, and there have been a lot of business failures, and there is a lot of spotlight in on the auditors, that how did the auditors evaluate the management's assessment of the going concern. And then the most simplest thing is there any mention in the financial statement and in the auditor's report talking about the same? And if you pick up a few of the important, you know, auditor's report and the balance sheet where they were going concern issue, you'll also find whenever there is a red flag by the auditors in terms of going concern, the external regulators, other stakeholders do consider this very seriously. So you have to always keep that aspect in mind. I mean, I'll not bore you with this. Now let's deal with this topic, communicating of this going concern issue with those charged with governance. These days, communicating with those charged with governance is very important. And not only communicating, but it is also important that we document the same. And documentation should start from a SA 230 point of view. That first is identify who are the people who are to be included under this those charged with governance category. And then we must appropriately discuss this entire going concern assessment carried out by the management, that what is the assessment, what are the key risks, what are the key assumptions, what is the significant estimate, what are the judgments made, what are the risks that one sees, has management factored in all the variables and risks which are there, and is there any regulatory action, anything from lenders, business associate, key suppliers, vendors, labor union, legal action, anything which could be happening. So we must have that discussion with those charged with governance. And this adequacy of the procedures uh, and the disclosures for the same in terms of the financial statement should also be thoroughly discussed with those charged with governance. And we should also ensure that the same is documented, minuted in their minutes, so that there is a proper ownership in terms of the management who actually has carried out the assessment. And what we should also do is keep in mind, if there is a significant delay in the approval of the financial statement by the management or those charged with governance after the date of financial statement, then auditor should also inquire as to the reasons for this delay. And if the auditor believes that the delay could be related to events or conditions relating to the going concern assessment, then auditors should perform those additional procedures or audit steps as described in the standard, as well as consider the effect on the auditor's conclusion regarding the existence of material uncertainty as described. Because what happens is you have this extra period where certain events or conditions could have prevailed or taken place which could impact this. So always look for subsequent events also. Say, for example, you are signing 31st March balance sheet. And in April, I mean, your major credit line or bankers have recalled the facility, or there are major defaults happening, or I mean, suddenly, let's take a live example. COVID situation arose and your business has completely stopped. I mean, a few industry examples we can look at to travel, hotel industry. I mean, one fine day, suddenly, I mean, the airline hotels, I mean, they had zero business when the lockdown took place. So one has to keep all these aspects in mind. And then what happens is, does your credit facility remain as it is? Do your bankers recall it, etc.? So keep all those aspects in mind. And when you are communicating with those charged with governance, also ask them, are there any additional facts, etc., data point which they are aware of, which they would like to share with us, and take into aspect all of that. So all of you would have dealt with this COVID-19 implications while finalizing. Now, this will March 22 would be almost the third year which will be finalizing, where you'll have to keep this aspect in mind. There's a very peculiar trend. Every year December, this virus strain starts getting activated, and Feb March, I mean, when our finalization time is there, I mean, we need to assess this. So I mean, what are the key questions one has to ask or keep in mind? Why I'm taking this COVID-19 assessment is this the best and the simplest example of external factors or anything that can happen which will cause you to look at the going concern assessment in a different manner. like, see from a COVID-19 impact perspective, that what is the industry your client is in? What is the business impact? Certain companies and industries have bigger impact, more impact on their business. Say, for example, uh, pharma life science companies, in fact, they were positively impacted. All of them have had their best of the times in terms of business for last 2 years. But one can't say the same for businesses or companies in the sector like hotel, airline, tour, travel, restaurant, and some of the retail companies. Uh, so this will depend on each company, industry, and one has to be thoughtful about making that assessment. So one has to keep in mind whether has the management performed this assessment, then was there any disturbance, interruptions in terms of supply, how's the demand, are the sales happening normally, are the outlets being open, are the people able to attend? Say, for example, if your outlet is allowed to be open, but if the people can't travel, obviously your business is going to get hampered. So all these aspects you have to keep in mind. And most important is from an audit standpoint, you need to have all this audit evidences with you on your file and use it for your assessment. Then one has to make a judgment that depending on this COVID impact assessment, what is the impact on the company's business and how it is dealt with in the financial statements. You could end up in a situation that there is a high level of uncertainty, and you could even end up bringing it out as a EOM, or in certain situations you could even end up saying, look, this casts significant doubt on the entity's ability to continue as a going concern. So, as I said, one has to do this evaluation, keeping in mind your specific company, the industry that it in which it operates, and how does one handle this. So that was largely in terms of what I had to cover in terms of the going concern standard. So just to summarize before we open the floor and take the questions is that going concern assessment is most important in today's context, where there is so much of fast changes happening, not in terms of your business, but on economic front, legal front, and things which are not in one's control. I mean, it could be pandemic, different strains coming, different viruses coming, and it is continuing. Plus, I mean, it is not just, within your geography, but there are so much external factors and international trends which could impact your businesses. So one has to be a little bit broad in terms of their objective when they are making that assessment. And most important aspect, which I am again and again repeating, is auditing standard compliance is fundamental in terms of our audit work. And how do you document this in your audit work paper? It has to be compliant with SA 230. And that is going to be fundamental when one is going to evaluate that whether auditor has obtained appropriate and sufficient audit evidence in terms of the evaluation of the management's going concern assessment, and how did the auditor satisfy themselves that is the work appropriate, is their conclusion appropriate, and ultimately how did they deal with the same in their audit opinion. So let me stop here and open the floor to any questions, inputs, or thoughts one has. Deepika ma'am, any questions, any inputs you have?
सॉरी सर, क्वेश्चन नहीं है सर, एक भी अभी तक माइक म्यूट कर। रवि सर, एक भी क्वेश्चन नहीं है सर, सॉरी सर।
Okay. So, thanks to
So, Shekhar sir?
thanks to all the participants for their patient hearing. And I mean, even if you have questions which you don't have it right now, in future, please feel free to write or text to me. Happy to be of help to all of you. Thanks.
Hello, Shekhar sir. Sir, what are things?
Yeah. Yeah, members, we all start the study of audit with the going concern concept. As Ravi sir narrated in his presentation, this is the most complicated topic in today's context. Sir has tried to explain this concept by discussing the scope of SA 570, the responsibility for assessment of the entity's ability to continue as a going concern, objectives and the responsibilities of the auditor, the risk assessment procedures and the related activities, and then the most important concept, that is evaluating the management's assessment and the documentation, then the additional audit procedures when events or conditions are identified, and ultimately how to conclude about the going concern in our audit report. Sir, in your presentation, you discussed various practical situations which will definitely guide all of us when we are reporting about the going concern in our audit reports. Sir, on behalf of WRC, I propose a hearty vote of thanks, and I request all the members to carry it with a round loud of applause. Thank you, thank you, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Appreciate.
Thank you.
So I'll just drop out.
Yes, sir. तो निशांत सर, कैमरा ऑन करेंगे सर आपका?
So say for example, the last bullet is they have say one group has say 7 entities operating with you or 10 entities operating with you. So it is not important that all
Hello,
of the
Nishan sir.
entities go and find them. Okay, it is of no use. So what you do is you say that entity number 4 will be the designated entity for the entire group to be do the master filing by the form on behalf of the entire group. To do that, you have to first obtain that entity or
Shekhar sir, sir का
Yeah.
interview.
Hi, am I audible?
Yeah, good evening, friends. Our second session is on SA 580, and we have with us CA Nishant Nemani. CA Nishant Nemani is a chartered accountant. He is a member of the institute since 2012. He has successfully completed certificate course on Ind AS from ICAI. He is currently associated with SRBC and Company LLP Chartered Accountants for more than 5 years. Before SRBC, he was associated with GM Kapadia and Company. In all, he has post qualification experience of more than 9 years in conducting statutory audit and tax audit. He also provides technical consultants in IGAP and Ind AS accounting standards. He has worked as a team leader for conducting statutory audits of both listed and non-listed entities. He has extensive exposure of performing statutory audits, including consolidations and also the tax audit across various industries, ranging from renewable energy to shipping to hotel to retail and so on. With this, I request CA Nishant Nemani to start his presentation on the very important topic of SA 580 written representations. Over to
Hi all.
Yeah.
Hello all. Is my screen in presentable mode right now? Or is it still in PPT mode?
Sorry sir, क्या बोला आपने सर? निशांत सर?
I'm asking, is the screen in proper presentable mode right now?
Yes, sir. Proper, sir. Proper.
Yes,
Continue,
Okay.
sir.
Okay. Thank you. So, hi guys. My name is Nishant Nemani, and I'm here to address you on written representation. Normally, in an audit, we have many inquiries from the management. We ask them lots of questions. We ask them lots of. We get lots of answers from them. But we do not have any documentation supporting to say that management has said this, or management has replied this, or management has done this. These are mostly all verbal in nature. Hence, SA 580 comes into a place where we need to where it gives us a document that what was the management intention and how is the management addressed all these situations. And it is written formal communication from the management of their intentions and the answers to our questions. So it's a very critical and important document for an auditor to have in its file. So today's agenda will be on SA580 will be we will cover the scope, what are the objective and definition of SA580, management. So from whom we have to take these representations, what are the written representations that we need to take from the management, what are the other representations that we need to take from the management, what should be the period and the date covered by the representation that is supposed to be taken from the management, what's the form of the written representation, and what if we auditor faces an issue with the management representation and how does he evaluate or report on the situation. So this is what is the broad agenda of today's session, and this is also what has been covered by the standards. Moving ahead, scope and written representation of the audit evidence. So what is the scope of this standard? The scope of this standard, just hold on. Okay. Okay, so what is the scope of this standard? The scope of this standard is it is the auditor's responsibility to obtain a written representation from the management. Management will not come and say that please take it in writing. It is as an auditor, it's your responsibility as a practicing auditor to take a representation from the management or where appropriate those charged with governance of their intentions of the inquiries, response to their inquiries. So SA is very clear saying it is the auditor's responsibility to obtain this written representation from the management. So what are written representations help us with? So written representations are as an audit evidences. So what does audit evidence mean? SA 500 says audit evidence is all the information that an auditor gets and it helps in auditor arriving at a conclusion on the financial statement. So that is what SA 500 says that this is an audit evidence definition. So how does that written representation fits in the definition of an audit evidence? So it is written representations are necessary information that the auditors require in connection with the auditor of financial statements. So there are many times what happens is we ask management certain queries which are in and we get an answer which are in the nature of process or understanding. Those are not some kind of transaction. There is behind logic behind an answer. There is sometimes logic behind every transaction. So where do you document those logic? How do you get to know that management has said those logic? So written representation gives us that logic and help us as a proof in audit evidence that this was the management intention, this was the management logic behind the transaction. So that is how a written representation helps us as an audit evidence. And so these are what? So these are basically we ask the management what was the nature of transaction, why was this done, what was the logic behind it. These are all the queries to the management or the inquiries to the management. So the responses to the inquiries are, are written representations, and those are in the as audit. Then those in turn act as a audit evidence. So moving ahead, what are the key consideration for written representation? Uh, what if you prepare a written representation, share it with the management, say that these are the representation that we require from you. Management says either modifies those representation, or they say we won't be able to give you a particular representation that you have asked for. What will happen? So that raises a red flag or a trigger point stating that there is a possibility that there is an issue in the area, or one or more significant issue might be possible in the required area. So that is a key important. We have framed a representation. Management either modifies it or either says no, I will not be able to give you the written representation. So that raises a red flag. How to deal with a red flag is given ahead in this. We will deal with in the coming slide. For the management representation oral, we will not be able to substantiate anywhere that management has said this orally. Even if you document it in your file saying that management has said this, how will you justify that management has said this? So management written representation helps us in documenting what was the management's intention that they have communicated to us orally. That will help us support all our documentation that we have done in the audit file, stating that this was management said. Also, the written representation sometimes helps the management to evaluate the concern more rigorously. For example, uh, you say that there was some loss by theft. The management said this was normal in the course of business orally to you. This that the goods were in transit and the boxes might have dropped off. No normal box normal loss in this kind of situation. But when you ask the same thing and ask the management to say, kindly give us this in writing, they will then go into situation where they will analyze the situation, stating why was this loss, why this the boxes got dropped, or how was the any sort of loss that happened, why it happened. So when you ask for a written formal communication, it management considers such matters more rigorously. When instead of saying it orally, when people say orally, they give you a fact, but they do not give you the basis of that fact. So when you write them down, one there's facts in written, it helps the management. It also triggers the management to give the fact in written and to give an exact fact. So that is one of the key consideration for. That is why a written representation is very important. Moving ahead, although written representation provide necessary written representation will not and substitute to our audit procedure. This is very important. If you get a written representation, you will not say that this is enough. I do not need to do any other audit procedure. My other audit procedure, my other audit evidences will have to be done irrespective of we get a written representations or not. Having a reliable written representation will not uh, take away the fact that I need to do less procedures on the I need to do adequate procedure on the other areas. Even for a particular area, if you get a written representation, for example, in case of trade receivable, you management says that this is more than 6 months, and this is the reason why we assume that these trade receivables are good. Now, this is a reliable written representation. Management has given you supporting facts for it, but taking this on record will not say that I will not perform any procedure on the trade receivable. I have to perform all the trade procedures that I need to perform on a trade receivable count caption. So this is one of the most important thing that one has to keep in mind. Written representation does not take away your. You should not decrease your procedure on other areas. And written representation are not itself a complete documentation. This is just a response to inquiry. So this will not be a written presentation will never help me have 100% assurance on a particular area. It is only to support the other documents that the management or other logics that the management is given. So if I obtain a written representation for a particular area, it is not a 100% assurance for a particular area. You need to have other procedures in place. Going ahead, what is the objectives and definitions given in the standard? So the standard says the objectives of an auditor are to obtain written representation from management and where appropriate, those charged with governance, that they believe that they have fulfilled their responsibility. This is the key thing. You need to take written representation from the management that they have fulfilled their responsibility. How? By looking at the evidence, you will never be able to know whether management has fulfilled their responsibility, whether they have taken in all the things or they have considered all the accounting frameworks, whether they have relevant frameworks applicable to them. I'm sorry, just hold on. You will never be able to know. So this is a written representation helps you take on record that management has fulfilled all their responsibility while preparing the financial statements, or they have provided you with a complete set of information. So this is a key thing, an objective that auditor obtains from a written representation. Although you get an audit evidence for other areas, you get the logic, but the key thing that you need to have in the written presentation is that the management has fulfilled their responsibility for the preparation of the financial statement and for the completion of other information. Next objective is to support their audit evidence to the statement of financial or specific assertion in the financial statements by means of written, if necessary, by the auditor or other. Sometimes there are other standards of auditing that requires you to take written representations, or you as an auditor feel that you need a management representation on a particular set. What do you need? So it also helps those logic, those management representations act as an audit evidence along with the other evidence that you have obtained in conjunction with the other audit evidence that you have obtained. So this is the second objective of an auditor. The third, to respond appropriately to written representation provided by the management. Okay, so what happens once you get a written representation from the management, you need to identify whether management has said that you have whether they have agreed to the written representation given by the audit. They will give us the written representation as agreed with the auditor, or whether they will not give us the written representation. We need to appropriately respond to it. How do we respond? It is via audit report or by rejecting the audit. It depends on the case to case basis. For example, if the management says, I will not give a written representation of any of the things, unless it is guided by laws and regulation, unless it is guided by any acceptable accounting framework, auditor has an option to withdraw from the audit. So that is one example that I am giving you. So we need to respond to the written representation received from the management. So it can be either modified, it can be as per what we have submitted to them, or they may say no, we will not give you any sort of written representation. The auditor need to then assess their audit reports or findings in light of the situation. Okay, so going ahead, what is written representation? We are right now said that auditor needs to obtain written representation. What are the objectives of written representation? What is written representation? So the standard says a written representation, written statement by management provided to the auditor to confirm certain matters or to support other audit evidences. So that is written representation. So it can be, it says the written statement by management. So it is in written format given by the management to whom? To the auditor to confirm certain matters. For example, what it can confirm is that the trade receivable is receivable. We are in negotiation, and this is not a bad trade receivables. So that is a confirmation of the matter given by the management in writing, or to support other evidence. It also supports the other evidence that I did not need to create a provision for it. Although my debtors are outstanding for more than 6 months, I did not need to create a uh, क्या बोलते हैं, provision for it. So that is a written representation. It helps you to confirm a situation or to support your audit evidence. Going ahead, written representation in this context do not include financial statement, the assertion therein, or supporting books of account. So management says that this is the financial statement, this is what we have prepared. This is you can assume that this is prepared by management, so this is a written representation. No, that is not the case. Financial statement or the account captions in it, or how we have classified or how they have resolved our assertions on the account captions will not be a written representation. It is a specific inquiry from the management that you have, management responds to that, and it acts as a confirmation from the management, or it only supports us. The financial statement is not a written representation. So that is what the standard has defined. Moving ahead, so from whom we need to take written representation? Now the question comes, we need to obtain written representation. Now from whom should we obtain written representation? So the standard says that auditors shall request written representation from management with appropriate responsibilities for the financial statement and knowledge of the matters concerned. So the standard says it is to be obtained from the management. First of all, you need to obtain from the management. Which management? There are various hierarchy in the management in the system. It's an operation guy, it's a finance guy, it's a project head, it can be anyone. So whom do you consider as a management? So management with appropriate responsibility for the financial statement. So the person who has responsibility for the financial statement, and who also has the knowledge of the issues, from them we need to take the written representation. Okay. So in this case, so who is management now? If you go in more detail, who is management? So these are the person who are responsible for preparation of financial statement. They may vary depending on the organization structure or the acceptable accounting framework or the particular laws and regulations. So they may vary according to various definition or the governance structure put in place by the management. So in by the company. So management changes, but what does not change? The change is the person who has responsibility of preparing the financial statement. So any person who is responsible, be it any sort of government regulation, with organization structure or laws and regulation, the person who has responsibility for preparation of financial statement, from them you need to take the written representation. Now your question will come: the accountant has the responsibility? No, it is the management's responsibility to, or the board of directors in some cases, to prepare the financial statement to give a fair view. They are the ultimate person who are responsible. Accountant is just a preparer of the financial statement, but the ultimate responsibility lies with the board of directors or the audit committee or any other person, for example managing director or a CFO or a CEO. So these are the person who are actually responsible for the financial. It is not at a junior level. One need to understand that part very critically. So an accountant gives you saying that these are, I agree to it, will not suffice. It has to be someone with responsible and authority to sign off those financial statements. Secondly, a person who has sufficient knowledge of the process of the followed by the company in preparation of the financial statement, that person only should sign. For example, again, as I said, so a person who prepares the financial statement and who has complete knowledge of the process should be the person who is supposed to provide a written representation. So that is defined as the management from whom a written representation is requested. So going ahead, what are the key consideration is this? So what happens? Sometimes you go to a CFO, CEO, you need at the end of the audit, you say that you require this representation. What happens is sometimes CFO, CEO also relies on third party for technical evaluation. They may internally go and check with those person, but ultimate responsibility lies with the CFO and CEO. So they may consult, for example, an actuary. For example, the actuary has used certain discounting rate, certain percentage, certain assumption, and as a which was given by the management. So we ask management to provide us with the written representative that this was provided by you. So management in turn may inquire, may take consultation from the actuary, but ultimate responsibility lies with the person who was responsible for preparation. Actuary is just a medium who gave help in preparation of the financial statement or who had some knowledge, expertise in a particular area. I'm sorry. So they are the person who has done so. For example, staff engineers who have responsibility. How does staff engineers help? For example, you take in return presentation that based on technical evaluation by management, depreciation life of the plant, useful life of the plant is 5 years or 10 years, which is different from company's life. So who will give this technical information? The management has to approach somebody internal for it. So that is an internal consultation done by the management. But ultimate responsibility again lies with the management in preparation of financial statement. The person had a technical expertise in providing useful life evaluation. So this is a key consideration. Although management may go in detail to ask someone to provide a written representation to them, but ultimate responsibility is with whom? It is with the management to provide the written representation. Again, there may be a situation where management provides a qualifying language that, to the best of their knowledge and belief, the financial prepared in accordance with the reporting framework. Now, this is a negative assurance that they said to the best of their knowledge. They are not saying that we have prepared the financial with the accounting framework. They say to the best of their knowledge and belief that they have prepared it in the applicable. So, in my chance, if they missed out something, so that's a negative assurance. The auditor needs to evaluate this kind of assurance, that from who is giving such kind of assurance, whether the person who has complete knowledge of the financial statement or person with appropriate responsibilities is who is giving this sort of representation, and he can, and whether it is satisfying for the auditor that he can rely on such negative representation. If it is cannot rely on such negative representation, he should go back to the management, discuss the same. If he can rely on such negative information, he can document and go ahead. It is based on auditor's judgment again. Auditor has to use his judgment and technique to decide this. Expertise, not technique, judgment and expertise to decide this. Going ahead. So what written representation do we need to take from the management? So the next slide talks about what written representation should we take from the management. So first and foremost, as per auditor's objective, we need to take a representation that management has fulfilled its responsibility in preparation of financial statement. That is the utmost and the most important representation that we need to take from the management. That they have fulfilled their responsibility in preparing the financial statement. Financial statement are prepared in accordance with the applicable framework, and where relevant, it also gives a fair representation of the financial statement. So that is the most important written representation that we need to take. Further, we also need to take representation from the management that they have provided us access to all the information and access to all the all the information, all the places as agreed with the audit engagement. So if you remember, in SA 210, it says that you need to pre-hand agree with the management that they will provide us with the written representation. So SA 210 is agreeing on the terms of audit engagement. So before we start an audit, we need to go ahead and confirm with the management that they will provide us with the written representation. Accordingly, auditor it was provided by. So accordingly, we need to assess that all the information as discussed in the audit engagement while before starting the audit engagement, as per the terms of agreement, has been provided to us. So that is has been provided to us. That also we must take as a part of written representation. Further, all the transaction has been reflected, recorded in the books and reflected in the financial statement. That also we need to take. That management has not missed out on any critical transaction, any major transaction, any transaction which is over a trivial amount. That also confirmation we need to take, that all the management provide all the information in the financial statement. And according to this information, all the transaction has been recorded and reflected in the financial statement. So that is also one of the key things that written about written representation that we should take from the management. Going ahead, again some key consideration. Okay, so we do an audit. We say that all the financials are prepared as per accounting framework. But looking at those evidence, we will not be able to judge solely that management fulfilled all its responsibility. So our audit will always be incomplete if if we do not receive the written representation from the management that uh, or written representation from management confirming that they have fulfilled their responsibility. Okay, so this is one of the key consideration. Even if you do an audit, you receive all the evidences, you as an auditor, we receive all the information, we have all the proof in hand. But how will we come to know, looking at those proof, that management has fulfilled its responsibilities? We will not be able to prove this. Hence, this is one of the key consideration that we need to keep in mind, that we need to obtain a written representation, because management responsibility will not be confirmed unless we have a written representation from them in hand. Further, sometimes as an auditor, you may ask the management to reconfirm the understanding or acknowledge the understanding which they have already provided. So when does this happen? This happen is when uh, the original person who have signed, for example, there is a change in management. The entity was purchased by some other management during the course of audit. Okay, so there is a change in management. So there are new management in place. So you may ask the new management to reconfirm all the facts which were already stated in the earlier uh, written representation. You may also say the terms of audit engagement prepared in the previous year. When the terms of audit engagement prepared in the previous year and the audit engagement letter was signed in the previous year, and there was already a issue of an written representation already issued in the previous year. However, in the current year, there is continuation of audit engagement. You may have to ask the management to reconfirm all the understanding and everything again. Again, you may ask management to reconfirm if there is a misunderstanding between the auditor and the management on the responsibilities. For example, in SA 210, where they say that there might be a misunderstanding between the responsibilities of the auditor and responsibility of the auditor and the management. So when there's a misunderstanding, you might need to again ask for management that you have already submitted, but I think so we were on a not on the same line. You will require to issue a new written representation based on the consensus agreed on the responsibilities. Okay, and any other change in circumstances or any other which you may require to issue a reconfirm the written representation already issued. Okay, going ahead. Okay, so what are the other forms? We heard the basic written representation that we need to take from the management. So there were additional written representation that an auditor might determine that he or she needs to take from the management for as an audit evidence. Sometimes these are guided by other standards on auditing. Sometimes auditors themselves seek additional information so that they can, in conjunction with the other audit evidences, they can make their file complete. So what are these additional representations that the management may take? Well, that an auditor may take from the management. So the first is whether the selection of application of accounting policies are appropriate. So the basic other written representation that the auditor will take is that the accounting policy and application of those accounting policy are appropriate while preparing the financial statements. Further, for all the numbers which have been recognized, measured, or present and disclosed in the financial statement, for those, how did the management arrive those numbers? What was their plan? What was their intention? And how does that plan or numbers affected the carrying value of those asset or liability in the financial statement? How did the management arrive at contingent or actual liability? So these are the additional written representations that we may take. So this is a list which is not completely exhaustive, but it will help you in understanding what are the additional representations that we can take. For example, title deeds. The next is title deeds. So, or a control over asset. The management says that although my asset is lying with a third party, these are my asset and these are belonging to our company. So that is a representation given by the management that although the assets is lying with the third party, used by the third party, those are your assets. So that is a representation. The title deeds, although the title deeds are pledged with the bank, those are original title deeds and those are with in the name of the company. So that's again a written representation. Or any other laws and regulation aspects or contractual agreement for in nature that an auditor may feel or may, according to his judgment, seek additional representation from the management. Further, this third part is very important. The auditor should be communicated via written representation that management has disclosed all the control deficiency to the auditor which they are aware of. This is one of the most important written representation that we need to take, specifically where ICFR, where the auditor is required to report on internal control over financial reporting. So this is one of the critical ones that you need to take as a representation that management has communicated to you all the deficiencies that the management is aware of in the internal control process. Okay, going ahead, you may also take written representation about various judgments that the management used. How did they arrive? What was the past history that they used in carrying value? What was the change they considered in the current year from the judgment they were taking in the previous year? What is the specific course of action they are taking in the future years for corrections or corrections they are taking in the future years, or any sort of lack of information available with the management or information that might have been obtained by the management. It can be any ways. So all this logic, information which the management says or supports by giving a documentary evidence to you, and based on that documentary evidence, whether when they make a decision, all those should form a part of the written representation that management based on so and so document have used this logic, have used this representation. It can be for any balance sheet caption. You should not be restricted only for particular balance sheet caption, that if in auditor's judgment a particular account caption needs a written representation from the management of their intention, the auditor should seek those additional representation from the management. Moving ahead, so what is the date and period covered by the written representation? So what should be the date of the written representation from the management? So what date should management write on the written representation, and how, according to an as an auditor, for which date you will accept the written representation? So the standard says that the date of written representation should be near or as practicably near to the date of auditor's report on the financial statement. This is because we are also required to report on the events occurring after the balance sheet date. So for any events that we are required to report after the balance sheet date, so we need to take a management representation on the date of on the date of signing, that is date of the auditor's report of financial statement, or near to the signing date, because it should also cover all the events after the balance sheet date. What is the period covered by the representation? When you say period covered by the representation, what does that mean? It means which all years should the written representation cover. So the standard says it should cover all the periods which are represented in the financial statement. So if the financial statement presents a balance sheet and P&L for 3 years, 4 years, or 5 years, your written representation covers all the 4 years, 5 years, or 3 years, or 2 years, as the case may be, current year and the previous year. So your written representation should be taken near to the auditor's report of the financial statement, and it should be covering all the periods which is represented in the financial statement by the management. Again, here there are few key considerations that one needs to keep in mind. So some of the key considerations are, it may be in certain circumstances it may be appropriate for the auditor to obtain a written representation about a specific assertion in the financial statement during the course of audit. Where this is the case, it is necessary to request an updated representation. So, for example, you are doing an audit, you come across a particular area where you go and inquire with the management, and say, for example, a fire occurred. So you went to the management, state that what are the losses, what was the loss during the fire, what is the cause of the fire, how much is the loss that the management incurred because of the fire, etc. So whatever response that management gives you or will not be able to give you, or state that we are still in the process of identifying the losses as on the cutoff date of the balance sheet, and we are not aware of the total loss, whatever the case is, or the loss has incurred post the balance sheet date. So you might need not adjust the figures in the balance sheet date, but after you need to give a disclosure. But your management has not been able to assess the situation. So you will add that as a list of written representation from the management. So you need to take an additional representation, or while doing an audit post the balance sheet date. Suppose you are doing an audit in the month of April or May, and till that time things were good. While doing audit, there fire record, you may ask for an updated written representation from the management, saying that I require an updated on the fire record. Again, it is required for all years, all periods, previous, and it also is required to reaffirm the written representation made in the prior period. So why it covers all periods? Because management needs to reaffirm that the figure reported in the prior period are correct. Hence, it is required for all periods. When I say prior period, for example, 3 years prior to the balance sheet date, you are giving 4 years financials. So it should. So why it is asked for all 4 periods? To reaffirm, because you are representing a number as on a particular date of the previous year as well. Hence, you require a management reaffirmation from them that the numbers stating in that particular year with that carrying value is correct, and we require no adjustment to those numbers as well. Hence, a written representation is required to reaffirm all the written representation that were taken previously. Okay, going ahead. What is the form of written representation? When I say form, how does a written representation look? So first of all, a written representation is addressed to the auditor. Okay, first and foremost, it should be addressed to the auditor. It cannot be saying that to whomsoever it may concern. It is specifically asked by the auditor. It should say addressed to the auditors, SRVC and Co LLP or any other company or any other firm, LLP or firm, partnership firm. So it should be completely addressed to the auditor. Again, there is a twist in it. The standard asks if the management has to give a written representation publicly. For example, management says that if the laws and regulation require or a framework requires, accounting framework or some framework requires, that management should say that A, B, C, D, E, F on all these 10 points, management should give their written representation that they have fulfilled their responsibilities. Then the auditor needs to assess whether or not, uh, then the auditor needs to assess whether or not those responsibilities cover all the matters required by the auditors or not. For example, the framework says I need the management to comment on this 10 items publicly, and the management comments on those 10 items publicly. Now, over and above, like I will take a previous example, like a fire record. So that is not covered in the like any abnormal expenses incurred or any abnormality incurred. That is not covered in the public statement. Then the auditor needs to decide whether he needs to take a separate written representation for the ones which are not disclosed publicly. Okay, so that is a key thing that the auditor needs to take in mind when the written representation is submitted publicly, whether it acts as it completes all the representation required by the auditor or not. So what are the factors that that the auditors determine? So whether the statement includes confirmation of fulfill of responsibility. So when the management says that publicly I'm giving all this written representation, so does they say that whether they have fulfilled their responsibilities of preparing the financial statements, and as per the accounting framework, applicable accounting framework, yes or no? So that also should auditor assess whether the publicly given statement addresses those or not. Auditor should next is whether the statement has been given or approved by those from the whom the auditor requires relevant representation. For example, who has given this public return representation? Whether it is by the person from whom the auditor expected. Like I said, the definition of management in my earlier slide. The management has defined who is preparing the financial statement, who is ultimately responsible for the financial statement, whether they have come forward and given the written representation to the regulatory authority, to the public, or to whom. So, is the same person I am requiring in the written representation or not? That is also a key question that determines whether I need an additional disclosure from the management or not. And when was that representation given? Whether that representation was given near to the audit date, auditor's report date, or whether it was given at a later date. So, if a management wants to publicly give us laws and regulation or applicable accounting framework states that a management should publicly give a written representation of few items, the auditor should need to consider at least 3 points: whether those fulfill the whether those written representation state that management fulfill their responsibilities, whether those written representation have been given by the same person from whom the auditor expected their representation, and thirdly, whether it is near to the auditor's date or whether it is from for auditor date. It should be ideally near as possible to the auditor's report date. Okay. Going ahead, a formal statement of compliance with laws and regulation or for approval of financial statement would not sufficient information of the auditor to be satisfied that all necessary presentation is consciously made. So when a publicly statement says that all my financial statements are in laws compliance with laws and regulation, all approvals of financial statement have been obtained, this will not be completely satisfactory written representation given by the management to the auditor's satisfaction that I have obtained enough audit evidence to support my other areas, or this gives me an entire picture of management's logic, understanding, or their futuristic plan. So we need to be very thorough while deciding what additional written representations are required from the management. Going ahead. Now, you have obtained a written representation. There are two cases now. Okay. So you have obtained a written representation from the member. Either you obtain the requested written representation from the management or you do not obtain the written representation from the management. Okay. So these are the two possibilities that you have. Once you obtain a written representation, you have a doubt in those written representation or you do not have a doubt. If you do not have a doubt, chapter closed. Nothing to be done further. You will document those written representation as an additional document in your audit file. Okay. So when now going ahead, when you have a doubt in the representation that you have received or you have not received any representation, what does the standard say in such situation? Okay. So when do you have a doubt? So you have a doubt when you have concerns about the management's integrity, competence, ethical values, diligence of the management, or its commitment to do all its integrity, ethical, or diligence of statement. Auditor has to determine the effect that such concerns may have on the reliability of the audit evidence. So, if you obtain a written representation from the management and you have a doubt on the management integrity itself, how will you rely on that written representation? That is the key thing that you need to understand, and whether you can rely on the written representation and what are the repercussions that you need to take when you do not rely on the integrity of the management or you have doubt on the ethical values or diligence of the management who is giving the written representation. Okay, you need to evaluate written representation in such a case. So there may be a case where you have a doubt, but although on the integrity, but you know that whatever representations you wanted from the management and whatever is done in the books or recorded in the books are in line. So you may choose to rely on the written representation. That is again based on the auditor's judgment and expertise of the and knowledge of the auditors, how efficiently they are able to meet their document. And this is a critical matter that you need to document that although you had a doubt on the management's integrity, ethical values, or diligence, and still you have concluded. So this should be very well documented in your audit file or audit work paper as per SA 230. An auditor needs to be very careful while accepting a written representation of a management and has to document it thoroughly, robustly in your audit file so that if someone questions you, you have it ready in your audit file. Okay. The second case when you have a doubt on the written representation is when it is inconsistent with the audit evidence that you are obtained. So sometimes you obtain a supporting documentation from the management, and based on those supporting documentation, management took some decisions, and then you come and say that okay, management said they did took this decision XYZ based on this, and accordingly they recorded this entry. But when I see the books, the representation given by management does not match. How do I resolve this? So there is a doubt on the reliability of the written representation that the management give you a representation X and the book says Y. So you go back to the management, ask them that why is there a differences and how can we reach a consensus? What you are trying to say and what is in the books? How do they marry? So you need to ask them and get it resolved. So if it does not get resolved, or if the management says otherwise and the book says otherwise, you need to then reconsider your assessment on the management competency, ethical values. Again, going back to the first point, that if the matters remain unresolved in this case, where there is a mismatch with what management is saying, what the books is saying, you need to then reevaluate the management competency or integrity or ethical values. Okay, and accordingly, you need to then decide what ways you need to go ahead with it. Okay. So if the written representation is not reliable, auditor then needs to assess their impact as per SA 705. What is SA 705? Modification of opinion in the independent audit report. You need to then assess if the representations are not correct or is incorrect or it is not reliable. How will it affect your audit report? Unless any representation which is not supporting that management has not fulfilled their responsibility or is inconsistent with management's representation with the books or where we have a doubt, we need to reassess our audit opinion, because it is if management has not fulfilled its responsibility, how will you say that books are correct? How will you say that books are prepared in a correct way? So you need to reassess your books and your audit opinion accordingly. So first part was when you have doubts on the reliability of the written presentation. So now coming back to the second part. So what happens when you have requested a written representation and you do not receive a written representation from the management? Okay, so you went to the management asking, I want this written representation, and you did not receive. So what do? You discuss this matter with the management, saying that I wanted this representation, I did not get it. Is there a way out where I can have proper other evidences, where I can have, or whether you will re-evaluate and give other written representation? If management says no, then I need to reevaluate the integrity of the management and also check whether this representations or whatever the basic representation or oral representation that they have given, how will it affect my audit and what are the repercussions to that, and then I need to take an appropriate action again in as per SA 705, that is modifying an opinion of audit report. So there are two possibilities: doubt, when you have doubt on the reliability of the written representation received from the management, and requested when you have requested certain representative from management and you have not received it. So what do you do in both the situation? In both the situation, you document it and assess your audit opinion. Unless you have in one situation where you had a doubt on the integrity, but you still accepted the written representation, stating that these are reliable and we can go ahead with this, and you document properly as per SA 230. Okay. Moving ahead, final part of the essay is the auditor's evaluation. Okay. Uh, so suppose you do not receive a written representation and you management says we will not give any sort of written representation. You either have an option to withdraw the audit from the complete audit. Okay. And you need to inform those charged with governance that you are withdrawing the audit because there is no written representation received from them. Unless, as per law, you are required to continue with the audit as per applicable framework. You are required to continue with the audit, and then you need to reassess your opinion as per 705. In such cases, you should disclaim the opinion and stating that there is a sufficient doubt on the integrity of the management, and the management does not provide any sort of written representation. So when the management refuses to provide you any sort of written representation, you have two options: either to withdraw the audit, or you, if it is compulsory by regulation or law, you need to state that you need to modify your opinion and disclaim your opinion, stating that I have a sufficient doubt on the integrity of the management since they have not provided us with the written representation required. Okay, so there are two more cases in this you can come across where the management says that, okay, for example, uh, financial statements are prepared as per accounting framework except for the non-compliance matter, material non-compliance matter, which is not as per the accounting framework. So this is management is accepting that the financial statements are prepared as per accounting framework except for one entry, or whether management has prepared the accounting prepared the financial statement in line with accounting framework except for where there is a loss by fire and management has not yet assessed and given no impact in the book. Okay, so management itself is saying that in some particular two cases or one case, management has not prepared in these books are not in line except for this transaction, everything is in line as per accounting framework. So management, then the auditor will not be able to disclaim the opinion or disclaim the opinion on the financial statement. Then auditor will say that yes, management has provided you a correct written representation. Now you need to evaluate whether you need to modify the audit opinion in light of the transaction or not. You will not be able to modify or disclaim an opinion in light of that management is integrity or written representation. Suppose management gives a negative assurance on only one or two cases, then you need to assess whether for those one or two cases are those material, and then you need to provide a written representation, or then you need to qualify the audit report for one or two cases or not. So in case of negative assurance in particular transaction, you will not be able to disclaim an opinion. However, if the management says I will not be able to provide you a written representation, then you need to disclaim your audit opinion, because first and foremost, you are not sure whether management has fulfilled their responsibility. Written representation comes up and says that management should have fulfilled their responsibility, and they have fulfilled their responsibility. So written representations, so this was all by the standards. This is all there in the standards. So written representation are very, very critical for the management. For example, in case of COVID scenario, currently which is going on, you require an additional representation for future cash flow or projection from the management, stating that they have used certain cash flows, they have used certain projections, they have changed their projections, they have changed your assumptions. In case of COVID-19, you require an additional representation from the management. The auditor has to decide what all additional representation, and you take it from the management. If the management refuses, then you need to decide what you need to do accordingly. So that was it from my side. That covers the entire standard. Any questions? I will be happy to attend. Shekharji, you're there on the call?
Yes, yes.
So that was it. Written representation standards. If there are any questions, I am happy to take them.
Yes, sir.
They get
Hello.
freebies consequent to them achieving some.
Hello, Nitish sir.
Yes,
किशन sir.
I'm here.
किशन sir. सर दो तीन
Yeah.
क्वेश्चन है सर दे रहा हूँ सर आपके चैट में दो तीन क्वेश्चन दे रहा हूँ सर मैं आपको चैट बॉक्स
चलेगा.
में
Chat box में, okay.
देखिए दिया सर।
एक ही है, एक ही आया है अभी तक, एक ही है ना? Is there more?
और दे रहा हूँ
Sometimes we are challenged by client on signing parties for management representation. I understand as a good governance, the same individual signing financial statement should sign the representation letter. Is there any further guidance on this piece? Uh, there are no further guidance on this piece. Ideally, signing directors should be the same as the financial and this. However, if the any other person, the CFO is signing the return representation, or the CEO is signing the representation, it will suffice because they have or a finance controller for that matter in some cases, because they have sufficient knowledge of the financial statement, how was it prepared. They are the person who are held with the responsibility of preparing the financial statement and presenting to the board, and they have the ultimate responsibility and they know what still issues are there. So when you obtain a written representation in such a case from a person who is other than the person signing the financial, you should inform the board or those charged with governance, stating that I am obtaining this written representation from the other person who has not signed it. So you need to present it to them, stating that this is what all representation that I have as an auditor obtained from the management. So it in those cases, but ideally again that should those written representations should be signed by the person of authority. It cannot be signed by any accountant who's prepared the financial statement, whose responsibility is just to prepare. Uh, any person who is responsible at the ultimate level should sign it, the written representation. I hope that answers first question. The second question is there a guidance available when the representation letter should be dated? What is the maximum time gap between auditor report date and management representation letter date? Okay, so in this case, you need to go into, so for the date of financial written representation, you need to assess the how long you have taken a subsequent period assessment, because as an auditor you are required to report on subsequent events. So till the date of subsequent event, ideally you should, or near to the auditor report date, yani on the date of auditor report, you either should till that date you should take a written representation as a general parlance, because that is the period you are reporting on, and you are also required to report on subsequent event. So if you take a report of a, if there's a wider gap, you are not management is not representing of anything between that gap for first 2 months back, and your auditor's report is after 2 months. So for those 2 months, there is no one to take responsibility, whether all the things in the financials are disclosed or not. So it should be as minimal as possible. Uh, as a practice, I follow 5 days. That there should not be a difference of 5 days between the subsequent event or written representation. Sorry, subsequent event or the auditor's report signing. So, and for return presentation, I take it on the same date as the date of signing the auditor report as a good general practice. Going ahead, the next question is just hold on. If the misstatements are above AMPT but less than PM, are we required to include in representation? First of all, if the representation is very high, it is above AMPT. First of all, you need to then decide whether you need to modify your auditor's report or not. Secondly, you need to then decide whether your auditor's report requires to be modified. And if it is not required to be modified, you still need to take a session from the management stating that these are the written misstatements that were found, but those were trivial in nature, and hence there were no correction made in the financial statements since they were trivial in nature. A particular representation has to be taken for this, so that the management is aware, and you have also documented this was trivial according to management judgment and according to our judgment, and hence we will not be able, we have not taken any entry, or we have taken an entry based on the misstatement identified. So this is what you need to have it in your letter of representation. Is it okay for financial controller signs representation whereas CFO, CEO and director signs FS? In most cases, financial controller do not sign. They do not have the ultimate responsibility. Ultimate responsibility is with the CFO or CEO or the director of the company. Financial controller is just a controller. I earlier said in very few cases where there is no CFO, where there is no one who prepares it, financial control may sign. But it is not okay for financial control to sign the representation letter. It has to be someone who is ultimately responsible. Okay, so those are the 4 questions. Any other questions?
नहीं sir, बस okay. Last.
That was
Okay, so these are the
hearing here by through banking channel by a check or
Yes sir.
RTGS.
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
You know this provision.
Yeah, thank you, Nishan bhai. It was rather wonderful session, and the way you have explained in a very lucid manner, I thought there will be a number of queries, but the participants are very much satisfied with your views and the way you have discussed, considering the theoretical and the practical examples and all on the SFIAT written representations. On the behalf of our WRC, we propose a hearty vote of thanks to the Nishan bhai. Thank you very much for giving your valuable time. And I hope the members are also benefited with your views. So thank you all the participants also for the joining us. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you all.